She hands him a bubblegum wrapper. She doesn't know his name. She doesn't know his face. She doesn't know that she is his mother, that she used to hold him, used to sing to him, used to be the person he ran to. She just finds the wrapper in the pocket of her hospital gown, and she holds it out to him, and Neville Longbottom takes it. He always takes it. He keeps every wrapper she has ever given him. Not because they mean anything to her, because they mean everything to him. His parents are alive, they just don't know him anymore, and Neville has been visiting them in that ward at St. Mungo's since he was old enough to understand what had happened to them. And not once in all of those years has either of them looked at him and seen their son. He has never told anyone how that feels. He just carries it. He carries it through every lesson where Snape humiliated him, through every moment his grandmother sighed at his grades, through every year where the wizarding world looked at him and saw nothing worth noticing. He carries it all the way to the Battle of Hogwarts, where he stands in front of Voldemort alone and refuses to kneel. This is the story of Neville Longbottom, the boy nobody chose, and everything he became anyway. There is a prophecy in the Department of Mysteries. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies. 2 boys were born at the end of July 1980 to parents who had defied Voldemort 3 times each, Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom. Either of them could have been the chosen one. Voldemort chose Harry. Not because Harry was more powerful, not because the prophecy demanded it, but because Voldemort looked at 2 infant boys and saw himself reflected in one of them, the half-blood like him, and made his choice accordingly. That choice marked Harry, made him the boy who lived, gave him a story, a scar, a destiny, a world that watched him, mourned with him, and ultimately rallied around him. And that same choice, in the same moment, on the same night, left Neville entirely unprotected, because while Voldemort went after the Potters, another set of Death Eaters went after the Longbottoms. Not to kill, to interrogate. To find out where Voldemort had gone, they used the Cruciatus Curse. They used it until Frank and Alice Longbottom, 2 of the most skilled Aurors in the wizarding world, 2 of Dumbledore's most trusted fighters, lost their minds entirely. They were taken to St. Mungo's. They never came home. Harry Potter lost his parents in one instant. Quickly. Finally. Neville lost his parents slowly. In a way that never ended, they are still there, in that ward. Alive. Just gone. Voldemort didn't choose Neville, but Voldemort still destroyed him. He just did it more quietly. Here's the thing that haunts me about Neville's story. Harry's grief had a shape, a villain, a face, something to fight. Neville's grief had none of that. His parents were right there, and he couldn't reach them. His grandmother, Augusta Longbottom, raised him. She was not unkind, but she was not soft. She had lost her son, the brilliant, brave Frank Longbottom, and what she had been left with was a small, clumsy, frightened boy who couldn't seem to do anything right, who forgot things, who dropped things, who consistently underperformed in every subject that mattered. For years, Augusta worried that Neville might be a squib. She tested him, prodded him, enrolled him in things and watched him fail, until the day he fell out of an upstairs window and bounced, his magic finally surfacing, defensive, instinctive, and she exhaled for the first time in years. He had magic, he just couldn't find it on purpose, and then he arrived at Hogwarts, and nothing got easier. Severus Snape chose Neville specifically, deliberately, consistently. He held him up as an example of inadequacy, called his potions disastrous, awarded points against him. When a third-year Neville faced a boggart in defense against the dark arts. When the boggart took the form of the person Neville feared most in the world, it was Snape. Not Voldemort, not Bellatrix, who had tortured his parents into insanity while Neville was still an infant. Not death, Snape. Because the monsters in your daily life do more damage than the ones you've never met. Because terror is most effective when it comes from someone with authority over you. Because Neville woke up every morning knowing he would walk into a classroom where a teacher had decided he was worth less than the other students. And he went anyway. He just kept going. Not because he was brave, not yet. Because he didn't know what else to do. Herbology, people always forget about herbology. It was the one place Neville was exceptional. The greenhouse, his hands in the soil, no one watching, no one grading his fear. He was a different person in that greenhouse. And I think about that, about what it means to only feel safe in the one place nobody else wants to be. In his 3rd year, Professor Lupin takes Neville aside after the boggart lesson. He doesn't humiliate him. He doesn't redirect. He just asks. And for the first time, an adult at Hogwarts treats Neville Longbottom like his interior world is worth understanding. It doesn't fix everything. One kind professor can't undo years of being dismissed. But it is the beginning of something. Neville is not stupid. He is frightened, and those are not the same thing. He is frightened because he has been failed consistently by the adults around him, failed by a school that allowed a teacher to bully him, failed by a wizarding world that pitied him and then forgot about him, failed by a system that rewarded bravery but never acknowledged what it cost to keep trying when nothing feels safe. He carries his parents in a way nobody sees. He visits them every holiday. He sits beside his mother and accepts the bubblegum wrappers she presses into his hand. He doesn't tell his classmates. He doesn't show anyone. Harry and Ron find out in his 4th year, by accident, visiting the ward for a different reason. They see Neville with his parents. They see his mother give him the wrapper. And Neville's face when he realizes they've seen, he is ashamed. Not of his parents, never of his parents, but of being known, of having the private grief seen, because Neville has spent his entire life performing okayness, functioning despite everything, asking nothing from anyone. That is not weakness. That is an enormous kind of strength. The invisible kind, the kind nobody writes about, and it is quietly building into something. If these character deep dives are your kind of thing, subscribing keeps them finding you. That's all I'll say. Back to Neville. Harry starts a secret defense against the dark arts group in his 5th year. Dumbledore's army, a room above the pub, 28 students who decided that waiting for the ministry to admit Voldemort was back was not an option. Neville shows up, and he is the most dedicated student in the room. Not the most naturally talented, not the most polished, but no one, not Harry, not Hermione, not anyone, works harder than Neville Longbottom in that room. He practices the same spells 40, 50, 60 times. He gets knocked back and gets up. He is still there when everyone else is packing up. Because Neville finally knows why he's fighting. It isn't abstract, it isn't a prophecy or a war or a side to pick, it is his parents. In that ward, unable to recognize his face, Bellatrix Lestrange did that, and Bellatrix is still free, still out there, and Harry Potter is teaching him how to fight. By the end of that year, Neville is competent. By the end of the series, he is exceptional. Not because he discovered some hidden gift, because he showed up. Every time. In the Department of Mysteries, when the mission goes wrong, when the Death Eaters close in, Neville's nose gets broken in the first 5 minutes. He can barely see, he can barely breathe, he keeps fighting. When Harry tells him to take the prophecy orb and run, Neville refuses. He stays because these are the people who tortured his parents. And because Harry is his friend. And because whatever fear used to live in him has been replaced by something quieter and much more dangerous. Resolve. There's a moment in 6th year, Harry gone, Dumbledore dead, Death Eaters running Hogwarts, when Neville, Ginny, and Luna reform the DA. They use it to protect younger students, to resist the Carrows, to keep something of Hogwarts alive. Nobody asked Neville to do this. Nobody told him to. He just decided that someone had to, and then he did it. Voldemort is standing in the courtyard. Harry is dead, or everyone believes Harry is dead. Voldemort is telling the survivors to join him, to kneel, to accept that the side of good has lost. Most people are frozen. Some are crying. The moment is designed to destroy any remaining resistance. The sight of Harry's body carried in Hagrid's arms is meant to end it. Neville Longbottom steps forward. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have backup. He doesn't have a prophecy making him invincible or a destiny marked on his skin. He just steps forward. And Voldemort, who does not see Neville, who has never seen Neville, tries to humiliate him, locks him in the sorting hat, lights it on fire, laughs, and Neville pulls the sword of Gryffindor out of the burning hat, the one that materializes for those who are truly worthy. Not Harry, not Dumbledore, Neville, and then the battle restarts, and in the chaos that follows, Nagini lunges Voldemort's last Horcrux, the last piece of his fractured soul, the final thing keeping him mortal, and Neville Longbottom takes off her head with one stroke. The last Horcrux was destroyed by the boy who wasn't chosen, the boy who was dismissed, belittled, overlooked, and mourning for his entire life. The boy nobody thought would amount to anything, he is the one who finishes it. Bellatrix Lestrange is killed at the Battle of Hogwarts by Molly Weasley, not by Neville, and I think about that, the fact that he never got that specific moment of justice. He fought her, he defied her, but she was taken from him before he could be the one to end it, and somehow, that feels more true to who Neville is. He doesn't get the clean ending, he just keeps going anyway. After the war, Neville becomes a herbology professor at Hogwarts. Not an Auror, not a war hero giving speeches. He goes back to the greenhouse, the one place he was always himself. And his parents, Frank and Alice Longbottom, remain in St. Mungo's. There is no cure for what Bellatrix did to them. No potion, no spell, no final scene where Neville walks in and his mother looks up and says his name. She gives him a bubblegum wrapper. He takes it. That is the ending Neville Longbottom gets. Not a cure, not a clean resolution, not the moment where the grief finally makes sense. Just the same ward, the same wrapper, the same boy standing there choosing to keep coming back. Harry Potter's grief ended at the Battle of Hogwarts. The villain died. The war was over. There was a shape to it. Finally. A conclusion. Neville's grief doesn't end. It never gets a conclusion. It just continues. Quietly. For the rest of his life. And he carries it the same way he always has. Not because carrying it is easy, but because putting it down would mean walking away. And Neville Longbottom has never walked away from anything. The prophecy said the chosen one would have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. It didn't say which boy. Voldemort chose Harry, and in doing so gave Harry a story, a scar, a reason. But he left Neville with something harder, something the prophecy never accounted for. A life built entirely from choice, not destiny. Every single thing Neville Longbottom became, he became without anyone telling him he was supposed to. Without a scar marking him as important. Without a world watching and waiting for him to be great. He just decided. Over and over, in the quiet, in the greenhouses, in the DA room above the pub, in the hospital ward where his mother doesn't know his name, he decided to keep going. And the last Horcrux fell to him. Not the boy who was chosen. The boy who chose.